We've taken you on this Horizons journey today. This is Horizon 3. Horizon 3, if you remember, if you know that innovation model, it's things in the future. We thought, could we do a session on quantum? But we actually wanted to be applicable to people's lives so we can have a conversation about it. So we thought Metaverse there's been so much hype about the Metaverse. So our Horizon 3 session today is affectionately called the Metaverse BS Buster. Okay, so with that, I'm pleased to bring my colleague Saurabh Gupta back up. He's got a fantastic panel, which may or may not include Phil First. Okay, thank you, everyone. Over to Saurabh.
All right, thank you, thank you. We're almost close to drinks, guys, right? We are almost there, but we have to bust some bullshit before that. So let's call Dr. Mary, Francesco. Okay, so look, I think this, 6 months back, Metaverse was the hottest thing. Right now, it's ChatGPT. I don't know, in 3 months, it might be something else, right? And when Metaverse came into our lives, it was Metaverse on Web3 with an underlying distributed ledger, and people were throwing all kinds of buzzwords at Metaverse. I was looking at a presentation from Davos, the results of which I'll show you, versus our own research, and we got completely different results. But before I reveal those results, I wanted to get a sense check from this audience. What do you think is the Metaverse opportunity, by 2025? If we can try and do this Slido thing. Is it $1 billion? Is it $100 billion? Is it $1 trillion? I don't know what comes after trillion, but whatever. Something big, something reasonable, something small. Trillion, billion, 100 billion, 100 billion. All right, let's go with 100 billion. So most of the people here think it's a 100 billion opportunity. Okay, let me show you if we can move to the slides. Oh, it's becoming a trillion now. Okay. This is what was shown at Davos. There's some wonderful study that was done on Metaverse, and what was shown was that they did some CEO interviews. This was 6 months back. The CEOs, on an average, said that 4% of our revenues will be driven by Metaverse, and you do some calculation, and it came down to $1 trillion. So that was estimate one. We've been doing our own research, and unfortunately, our research leaders caught COVID, so that's why you're seeing me again. But we did our own research. We reached out to 18 of the leading service providers who are doing something credible in Metaverse. And even if we give them a lot of leeway, right? Even if you don't do this tightly, our estimate comes out to be $2.5 billion, right? How can there be such a big gap? We can't be that wrong, and they can't be that wrong either. So what is the answer? And I'd love to start with you, Mary. Why this gap?
Well, those studies are quite amusing. Yeah. Because they always start with, this is a $5 trillion opportunity, but we don't know what a metaverse is.
Yes.
Right? So as soon as you don't know how to define it, how are you possibly trying to size the market?
Yeah. Vivian?
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's in the definition. I mean, is it a 3D world? Is it virtual? Is it, the next frontier of Web 3.0? Is it the place where there will be, everything is decentralized and not regulated? So it's really hard to know. Is it basically a new playground? It's, I think, coming from a marketing angle or lens, it's very difficult to actually say, okay, this is what kind of consumer is going to be there, or customer is going to be there. So the size of the prize is this, because you don't really know, and nobody really has a set answer for it yet.
Look, I just choose to agree with the ladies. Yeah, but if you see, whenever we do such a studies, it's been done with limited set of audience, limited set of data, And there are some predictive and forecasting models are getting implemented on top of that. And that's where this number comes from. But what happens when we actually traverse the journey? Mostly the journey is very different, like any other technology, Metaverse will follow the same path. Only thing, if you see the world population, it is 7.7 billion. And around Gen Z and Gen X make, 20%, 2.5 billion. From that perspective, the technology adoption is higher than what we have seen earlier. And I think that will be the game changer. The number, no one can say, it's all finger in the air. Yeah. But the adoption by Gen Z and Gen X, I think that will be the game changer.
Francesco, what do you think?
Well, I think it's definitely a definition issue, what is the metaverse, and I also think it's a penetration issue of the device that enabled the experience. If you think in a similar way, like Uber was possible even when we were walking around with the old Nokias, the first color smartphones, but we didn't have high-speed internet and not everybody had an iPhone or a smartphone in their pocket. So I think the technology is there. People are excited because they see the potential of what the metaverse could be. There are some interesting applications, but there isn't a penetration at scale of the technology that will then bring to life this experience. And as a result, there is not enough content. And if you don't have enough content, then you don't have enough opportunities to monetize the metaverse itself.
Yeah. So both of you, quite a few of you have talked about the definition, right? So let's define it, right? Then what is the metaverse, right? When I started to learn about this, metaverse was this decentralized infrastructure and the user experience layer for that decentralized infrastructure, right? A lot of what, Mary, you presented today around Web3. Now it seems like glorified AR, VR, right? In a lot of use cases, it's just, there are these cute avatars, but we've seen those same use cases 5 years back. So what is the metaverse, right? Maybe we'll start from you, Francesco. How do you define it?
So the way I see it is really a way to live an immersive way, a certain experience. So it can be a full VR headset you put on yourself, but it can also be something much lighter in the form of like Google Glasses, for instance, that just expose and superimpose data and information, a sort of a layer of data and information that overlays what you're actually seeing in reality. Or it can also be an augmented reality experience. Like, for instance, company I work with, we have created a few augmented reality rooms where our clients are actually able to interact using their hands without gloves, without any interaction device, just using their hands and natural gestures. They can interact in a very immersive way without any headset on, just in a dark room with a lot of monitors around them. They can interact with buildings and rooms and cities. So for me, it's really using technology to create immersive experiences, and VR is only one of the possible declinations and channels, but there are many others as well.
Manish, how does Tech Mahindra define metaverse?
So I had a very interesting business, sports tech, and my typical audience are 5-year-old to 70-year-old. They're fans, they're players, they're gamers, they are esports players. And I will say something very different because I learn from my 11-year-old son, and I'm learning since last 3 years. The way the sports was being played and consumed before COVID and post-COVID is entirely different. We somehow adopted the new ways of learning, and the more interactive and immersive experience help us to engage with the audience better. That's what I can say, and that's what a very honest definition of metaverse we are trying to do.
Vivian, at Anabasis, how do you look at metaverse? What is it?
I don't know. I think it's probably closest to what Manesh has said. I think I think they're trying to create an experience really that is as seamless between a virtual world and a real world. But in the virtual world, there are more limitless opportunities to try, experience things. And so I think that's probably the vision, or where eventually it will get to if the tech, allows and people embrace it. But at the moment, I think we're still in a very nascent stage. It's super early, and I have views that maybe the tech isn't, I'm not totally sure I agree with Francisco in that the tech is where it needs to be, but I also think that adoption is not where it needs to be. So there's two parts to that, but my definition is closer to what you're saying, and having worked with Premier League football teams and stuff, that it is a huge opportunity, 100%. Like, there is so much that can be done there, and so much more accessibility and experiences that people can have that don't exist in the physical world.
Mary, how do you define metaverse?
Well, we did a white paper, and you can go to blockchain.uark.edu if you'd like to download it, because as an academic, one of the first things we did was look at everybody's definition, and I concluded that there were two paths. One is a metaverse, right? And that's just that's something we've had for 20 years. It's like a rebranding of, Second Life. Yeah. And there's many of them there today. And then there's the notion of the metaverse, where it's all interoperable and it's all of our senses. I mean, I've seen devices that emit smells to get your sense of smell and taste. Those are really bad right now. Full body suits and eventually implants. So to me, why I'm interested in this is, one, we need to talk about the governance, and I hope that comes up. But two, there are unique opportunities in this environment. And where I became convinced that this is going to change education is I took a metaverse class, and it was dissecting. We all learn how to dissect, right, when we're in high school. But because you can expand or contract objects, instead of dissecting a pig that looks this big, they blew the pig up, and we walked inside the pig. And we were, learning about the anatomy of a pig from the inside. And it was so real. You talked about immersion. I actually had a little mini panic attack, and I got stuck in the intestines, right? So I'm screaming, help, help, and my colleague's going, hit the transport button, hit the transport button. So, but it opened up my eyes to that kind of educational experience, the ability to expand and contract and engage in a way that we haven't seen in other technologies.
So Phil, you've recently briefed with 15 service providers around Metaverse? What are you learning? What is the Metaverse?
Yeah, I think it was good listening to Mary, because I think there's the Metaverse that's been around for 20 years, and the one that is emerging. And I think what started to transpire towards the end of last year was it was using a lot of tech that'd been around for a while, but finally was being used because we'd figured out how to use video. There's much more readiness to engage in new types of tech. Like VR was around 10 years ago, people trying sneakers on and all sorts of things. That's been around for a long time, and now that's being used a lot more. You can go and you can pick out bananas out of a grocery store. You can do all sorts of things like that. Sort of like, bringing old technology and making it more modernistic. That's one of the big things that's happening. The other thing I felt which is starting to work is using it for both customer experience, but sport experience is a big one, and then employee experience, where you could actually have like a emotional conversation with somebody in a metaverse setting. That's almost like you're talking to that person, and I've experienced that. I've experienced a setting where I'm working as a social worker, interviewing a family where the kid had bruises on her arms, and we had to do some investigation into how she got those, and it was actually very emotional, how close up it was. But at the same time, I'm being fed questions to ask these people. Like, it's saying, these are the types of questions you need to ask them. So some of these applications are very powerful and very immersive in terms of getting things achieved, particularly in, I'd say it could be a sensitive HR conversation at work, or it could be something like a social worker discussion, that sort of thing. Where it starts to get more out there is it really a headset related thing? Because I've spent a lot of time walking around my house with a MetaQuest 2 on, and sometimes I feel like I've got a PlayStation on my head, and can I play Super Mario Kart on this thing? And I actually, someone said to me, the problem with the Metaverse is a lot of people can't be whatted to put the headset on, because it is like, do I really want to put this thing on and get immersed? I don't think that's the long-term future. I think long-term future, actually what Michael showed me earlier, he took out some app on his phone and showed me with a pair of Adidas sneakers, and I'm like, that was pretty impressive. Didn't need to put a headset on for that. And so I think it's, the Google's vision is not a headset vision. It's more of a general vision, and I think that's more where it's going to go. I think Apple have invented some Metaverse glasses. I think they're still 3 years off, but those are supposed to be way different, like way more immersive, because I think the current headsets and things, while they're fun, it still feels a bit gimmicky than something I think that is, really game-changing, so.
Yeah, so when we talk about Horizon 3 technologies or issues, one of the things that we're always trying to understand as a research house is, will it actually work? Will it pay for it? Will it pay, or is it just going to be a flavor of the season? And so, Francesco, I'd love to get your views on some real use cases. Not sure if it's pilot or production, or would love to. And maybe if you give a little bit of background into what you guys are doing.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Well, we actually experimented a lot with digital twins even before the pandemic struck. Obviously, for those of you who don't know JLL, we are a professional services firm specialized in real estate. And among the many things we do, we also do, obviously, sales and lettings of commercial and residential properties. So we used to create some sort of digital twins of our most premium residential properties, as well as some commercial spaces before the pandemic, but it actually accelerated incredibly during the pandemic because suddenly people could not travel anymore. So they were not able to actually engage with the real estate asset by themselves. So it's all started as a sales and marketing experiment where we use these digital twins to actually empower users to feel how the building could look like for them, how they could fit it out, etc. And then it also became a, if you want, post-sales tool where it actually became an object that helped us and the client visualize how to potentially use the space. So not just in the, if you want, upstream sales and marketing phase, but also in the phase of deciding what to do with the space. And so I think what changed was the delivery model, because I agree very much, I think, on the metaverse is also what is the medium that you are going to use to deliver this experience. At the beginning, the digital twin was something incredibly technical. We did with Matterport. You had to use a sort of special viewing tool to go through it. And then it grew into an augmented reality room, but you still had to travel to an office and had that experience with one of our JLL colleagues. And then we put it into VR headsets, and now we're also doing some experiments with augmented reality, so with sort of partial overlays, etc. We have seen a clear ROI, so back to your point on the commercial results, I think we have seen clear ROI in the sense that the properties for which we provided a digital twin converted much more than the ones that didn't have one.
Okay.
So there was a very clear connection, but obviously we're still experimenting. It is scaled up to some extent, but it's still obviously an experiment.
But that's good news. Manish, I think, so if you look at HFS research, right, we've largely seen 4 sort of big themes. One is real estate, or showing things around. One is sports, games, which is where I'm going to come to you. The third is employee experience, from hiring to recruitment to interviews. And the fourth is industrial manufacturing, right? Doing hard things like dissecting or, those things. Would love to get your, use cases that you think have a positive business case as well, not just, fun use cases.
Yeah, look, not the business case. But we have done some successful pilots. We have built some products around it, and we call it as a fan next now. So
Fan next door.
What is the next generation fan is looking for, and to provide that experience now. Yeah, and 2 obvious use cases. How can I bring a stadium to home and home to stadium? And let me give a very simple example. I being an ardent sports fan since my childhood, whenever there is an international tournament used to happen, with my little saving, I used to queue up for the tickets at that time. It was very difficult because stadium capacity at that time were very limited and all that. Now, we saw this problem very holistically post-COVID when there were closed-door games were happening. Fans still want to interact with their favorite players or coaches, or want to see what's happening. They want to know more about it, what salad they are eating, what exercise regime their favorite player is following. So we thought about how can we solve this problem. If you see Liverpool United or Wimbledon, their stadium capacity is 60K or 30, 40K. But if you see their global fan base is around 80 to 100 million. So we are absolutely missing on the 80 to 100 million fans opportunity. We are not, there is no way other than broadcast or other than app or website to connect with them, but there is no way to engage with them year round. I'm not talking about a seasonal fan. When there is a Premier League happening, I'm watching the game, but I don't know what's happening after that to the team or to the player. How can you convert a seasonal player to seasonal fan to a year-round fan? And how can you, attach to the global fan base? This is the problem statement we put in front of us. And, COVID has given tough time. Even Man U balance sheet has gone very negative. Yeah. So it has given tough time. So we build a complete business model around it, where we can issue a digital ticket, which is much cheaper in the metaverse. You can interact with your favorite player in the dressing room or somewhere, what exercise regime they are following, and you can still charge something which is very significant, but not as significant as what you spend at the stadium. And this was an eye-opener because we have done some experiments, and the kind of revenue it has generated is really significant. And that's how we see this is going to go a long way from a sports perspective, because everyone can't be fit into the stadium. Someone was talking to me outside about the Wimbledon final ticket. It's very difficult to get, but everyone wants to watch it. How can you create an alternate digital revenue stream or business model where the fans, they can watch in the metaverse, they can interact almost in a more immersive and real-time way. Yeah. In fact, as a Tech Mahindra, our DNA is telco. If you see NBA, they are doing some very good experimentation with 5G and metaverse use cases, which precisely I talked about, that how I can teleport all of us in some different metaverse, and we leave you here, and the physical interaction, the physical world and digital world is as real as possible, kind of. And that's the future where we are eyeing at, and that's we feel is a new alternate digital revenue stream, a new business model for sports clubs and bodies evolving. That's number one. The number two part, if you see, I was talking to a gentleman yesterday from Adidas. If you see Nike, they did a casual selling in their metaverse of $185 million last year. Yeah. If you see Dolce and Gabbana, they've done around 15 million odd. If you see Gucci, they have done 12 million. If you see Lacoste, they have done 12 million odd. And they did all this selling on metaverse platform, and they call it as a meta commerce. So there is a huge potential. Only thing, it's not a silver bullet. What works for one business, as you said, the 4-quadrant employee experience and manufacturing and industrial and all, may or may not work. But sports, it is working because fan wants to enjoy the moment. They want to live in the moment.
Yeah. Vivian, what's been your experience of?
Well, I'm a marketing person and a comms person, so I'm much more of a generalist. So the comms part of me is deeply cynical about the metaverse, but the marketing side of me, like all of us sellouts, are like, but there's money in this, and JP Morgan is in Decentraland, and
yes.
there's brands, and there's players and sports franchises and all these incredible things. As I said, I don't think the technology is quite matching. I think part of the issue is there's a hype curve problem with the metaverse, and it fundamentally got a lot of bad press.
Yes.
And I don't think it helps when your primary spokesperson is Mark Zuckerberg. That is just like a recipe for disaster, right? And I think the concept, the intent, we will get there. I think it is inevitable. So I may not love the idea of having to wear a headset, or in the way that kind of Google Glass failed. Many, they tried it, it didn't work. I think when the tech can catch up, I think things will change. Now, I will give you an example where I actually think the virtual kind of technology side has had an incredible real world example, which is in ABBA Voyage. I don't know if anyone has seen it. If you haven't, it's incredible. I won't tell you anything about it, but obviously it's ABBA and they're not real. And they have managed to almost create this kind of fully virtually simulated concert with a live band. But that's a really good example of sort of a seamless way of bringing some incredible virtual technology into the real world. And I think that's going to happen more and more. And to Manesh's point around sports, okay, and I worked a lot in football before, mainly for my sins. And so the idea of kind of bringing the global accessibility and these fans, think about all these fans in Latin America who have players playing in the Premier League, and they're never going to get to see them play live unless it's on their national team. So being able to follow those players that they worship and being able to create that accessibility is an enormous opportunity, but it's also about equality and equalization. Football is a global sport. It is the global sport. And I think those are areas where you can start to see, you know, not just from a pure entertainment standpoint and a fan following standpoint, but just real effects that it can have in a positive way. And to Mary's point around education, and you know, I know we're going to talk about the industrial side, but I think there is a massive opportunity. It's just still very early stage, and I think it's had a lot of bad press. And you know, Meta obviously cutting back and losing $13.7 billion last year, et cetera. It's losing money at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it won't eventually start making money. Like a lot of technologies happen, new technologies lose money in the early stages. So I think we sort of need to sort of keep riding the wave a little bit and stay open-minded.
Yeah, but the example of ABBA is a great example, not just because I really like their
No, thank you, because I really was like, what is an example where I can talk about something that I've actually experienced?
Yeah, but it's got two things that I like about it. One, you don't have to wear that headset.
Yes.
It's actually almost happening in an auditorium, and that is metaverse. You know, so metaverse shouldn't be equated to headsets. Is one takeaway from that, and we've seen actually you can sell that. You know, you've got Michael Jackson. You can go and see Michael Jackson shows in Vegas sometimes. Obviously, he's not living, right?
So my big takeaway is just blame Mark Zuckerberg for the bad press of the metaverse, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and well, I'll come back to you, Mary. I have a special question for you, but Phil, you've looked at a lot of use cases. I think a lot of service providers have subjected you to a lot of use cases as well over the last 3 months or so. Tell us one or two examples that you thought were like, this can actually work in the real world and this can make money. If any.
No, I think most of them could. Most of them are CX focused. Some were just literally in-store purchasing, grocery store, fast-moving goods in particular, trying on clothes, shoes, all sorts of things. You know, we've seen so many examples of many of these at play. Examples of viewing real estate. I saw some very good examples of that where you can, you know, think about it, you got to go view 10 apartments in an afternoon, where you can go and visit them in a metaverse setting. You can literally walk around and get a very solid feel for what these places are like, save huge amounts of time. In insurance, for example, as well, there's examples around, you know, you can assess damages to buildings and cars and things as well. So a lot of just extension of reality, you know, going way beyond what you can get on a two-dimensional screen to something that was much more visual. So I do think we need to have, there needs to be evolution in headsets, definitely. I personally have been trying out some of the ones on the market, and I still feel that some of them aren't quite there yet. They're getting close, but there's a lot of examples of where this can be used, and obviously gaming is the big thing. That's where it's really springing from, is the gaming industry is very big. You know, you look at the generation, then the two generations behind us. If you think these kids are going to be staring at a Zoom screen in 2 years' time, we've got another thing coming. So I think in general, how we engage, look at the generation behind us and think how they want to engage. This is very much the future, and finding ways to manage this, weave it into consumer capability, employee experience, partner experience. It's all there, but I still feel we're sort of feeling away a bit in terms of real industrialized, you know, adoption. Sports sounds very interesting, by the way. I think that could be getting out there ahead of the rest outside of gaming. So.
No, that's great. So, Mary, one question that I had is, obviously your passion is around distributed ledgers, Web3, and then is Metaverse linked to that, not linked to that? How are you looking at the intersection or the dissection
Yes, so
Metaverse.
that goes to the governance
Governance,
question we
okay.
talked about. I'm thrilled Zuckerberg is failing because we don't want to give him the next version of this, right? Because we're all wearing the Quest headsets because they're cheap. I mean, even me who's worried about privacy, I couldn't get it through our procurement, so I have to buy the cheapest headsets. You only need to know this right now. Go look at the quote unquote privacy statements of a Quest headset. Everything you say, everywhere you look, everyone you talk to, it is surveillance capitalism on steroids. So that's my big concern is about the economic model if it's done in a Web 2 way. Now, granted, the experiences are much richer when you have a centralized platform because you can get VC dollars for it. So right now in the Web 3 space, I use the example of Decentraland, it looks like Second Life, right? You don't have the big investment dollars yet, but I'm rooting for it because I want that to be a model that it's privacy enhancing. That's my biggest concern about governance is the privacy.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, and I just had one other soundbite I wanted to say, the wrong audience to talk to.
Yeah.
And here is the clue. There are no wrinkled avatars. There are no gray-haired. I am young and beautiful in every metaverse I go to. I'm like, I earned these wrinkles. Can I make my avatar a little bit more, a little bit more look like me? But where it really resonates is, as you said, Phil, is that lower generation. And Accenture is one of our board members, and they have bought 60,000 headsets for their new employees and onboarded them in that. And having digital twins of like your office spaces or like a digital twin of our campus, the day we have to cancel for snow or rain, well, let's all just go into, for our virtual classroom and we're fully present. They're not distracted. They can't use their cell phones. They are immersed in present. So I think that's kind of the next couple years, what I think is valuable.
If I may, I'd say you're absolutely right that the users will be the next generations down the line. But fortunately or unfortunately, the people who are signing the checks are the wrinkled people, right? And they have to do something to move this needle forward, right? From metaverse to become just a buzzword or a hype or a Horizon 3 or however you want to call it, to something that's actually usable, right? I think there is an onus on our generation for that. Otherwise, it will always be,
Well, the ROI is what we've talked about all day, the bridge. How do you take people who are good gamers and then put them in your organization, right? So yeah, there's lots of young people that already are used to this. In fact, that's how I learned. I have 25-year-olds on my team because get me on here, just put me in here. And they engage and they want to develop and they want to learn and that's, to me, we're talking about a tech shortage. Well, where do you go to the next generation? This will be it. I think we'll all be retired before it really takes off.
No, just to add to Mary's point, we have a Formula E team, Mahindra Racing, at Oxford Banbury. And, when we started the sports tech as a business and we want to invest in any idea related to metaverse or any new technology or platform idea, we invite, we do a family day. We invite people and say, especially the kids from 11 to 20 years, we say, do you want to virtually race against the real driver? And driver is in the simulation room, and they were actually racing. And we just, validate the idea, as you rightly said, they don't have wrinkles and they, we clearly get the sign off whether this will fly or not. That's the, the real test of, the metaverse or any user journey or any use cases you are planning about.
I think we're out of time, but one last question, which I'll ask all of you is, we did this study, right, on all these buzzword or emerging technologies, and we simply looked at two dimensions. One is, what was the growth, right? What's the expected growth? But we also looked at what's the denominator, right? Denominator being how many people are going to adopt it, right? Because I think both those dimensions are important. If you look at just the growth, metaverse will come right at the top, but there are only 10 people who are using it, right? So then I think you need to have that balance. And that's what this chart sort of shows is metaverse is sort of going to grow very high, but there'll be very few people who are adopting it, right? If you look at the ultimate technology area where people will start to invest is in the upper right-hand corner, where it's fast growth and it's fairly large adoption rates, right? Metaverse is clearly not there. I think we'll all agree. How do we move it to the right? How do we drive adoption? Maybe I'll start with you, Francesco. Any bright ideas?
Well, I think it's a mix. I think we will probably see a convergence of also other trends I see there, like if you think about quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and how much sort of environments and worlds can be created, will be able to be created in the foreseeable future using these technologies. This will really allow us to scale. Back to my previous point, we really need to scale the immersiveness of these technologies. And today it's fairly expensive to do that. Tomorrow, with AI, with sort of computer-generated scenarios, it will be easier to do that. And I also think from a hardware perspective, and that in a way solves, if you want, the creation and creative parts of creating content, because you need content, you need that pull towards the technology. And then there is a harder point around hardware where you actually need to build a hardware that allows you to experience this content in a very easy way and in a way that is accessible to the masses. So I think we will see a lot of these trends actually converging, but for me it's really scaling up content creation capabilities that are really immersive and lifelike, and delivering those through endpoint devices that are cheap enough for the masses to own and easy enough to use, that it makes sense to use in an everyday scenario.
So economies of scale. Manish, how do you move this right? Move this dot right?
I think it's a factor of two things. Are we really solving the right problems? If you see the low-code platform, just for an example, fast growth and significant adoption. One of the biggest challenge of developers, is to merge the code of 20 different developers, and then fix it. I think low-code definitely solves that part of the industry problem. If you see sports, why we are seeing some success? Because we are trying to solve a problem, how to engage the remote fans with the players, their favorite players. You no need to queue up outside the, the stadium gate or dressing room to meet your favorite player. And there is a monetization model available for that. But here, if you see, unless we connect the dots and bring the metaverse to solve the problem, like the Uber did, kind of, how I can effectively attend my school classes on the metaverse, how I can Phil mentioned about the employee experience, how I can contribute to the organization productivity and organization vision and goal in a metaverse. Unless we build this, map this capability to the business use cases and problems, the adoption will be very low, number one. Number two, the digital maturity and cultural sensitivity is also very important. If you see the digital maturity of South Korea is way higher than any one of us, whether it's the US or whether it's the Europe. So that is also a very, very important part of the digital adoption or technology.
Fantastic. Vivian, any bright ideas?
I think they both made really good points. I think there's two things that need to occur. One is that for it to have greater adoption, people need to see not just a sort of entertainment benefit, which is a huge part of it. So let's not discount, like, people want to have fun and they want to escape and they want to, they want to have a good time. And there is definitely a huge element of that. And you can see that in gaming and sports and entertainment. This is where people are pouring their money into at the moment. I think the other side is probably a little bit on what Mary and Phil were talking about, which is around the experience and around education and around genuinely how will it help solve some problems. So I always think about, if the NHS could adopt things in the metaverse really quickly and you would go to see your GP, and a lot of this happened during COVID, you couldn't see a doctor physically. So how can you use the technology from the metaverse to help people make really accurate diagnoses as opposed to fairly arbitrary, call your doctor, call your NHS, and someone on 111 will maybe answer you 10 hours later. Those are real world problems, and people our age, the aging population, and I speak for myself, not everyone in this room, but the aging population are feeling like, that's what I care about. I care about if something is hurting and I want to get that fixed. That's the kind of help I want. But then on the other side, there's areas where it can be hugely efficient. I know we didn't get to talk about the industrial side of the metaverse, but imagine if you could just do things faster and cheaper. And that's the whole point of technology in a way. And that's something we haven't really had a chance to understand or tap into, but there is a huge amount of potential. And I think, Francisco, probably in what you're doing with JLL in the real estate side is the best example of what we have here. But I think Mary was talking about being inside a pig, but there's a real side to that, right? And where you think, okay, where is the real world benefit? And so I think it is about people in our generation or generations above feeling the real benefit of it, whether it's in healthcare or education or, protection, cyber or whatever it might be. And then on the other side, which is entertainment. And entertainment is ageless. So that's kind of a no-brainer. So I think once those two pillars start coming together, then there's a much greater chance of adoption properly and growth.
Fantastic.
Me? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to say ask me in December because I'm about to teach a Metaverse class on campus
okay.
in fall. And we're going
Once the class goes live, this dot will be right to the right.
well, we're going to go through the Web 2 versions and those experiences, and I'm going to expose them to this is all the data that you're giving away, and then we're going to go to the Web 3 versions and hopefully come up with some ethical guide rails.
Fantastic. Phil?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with some of the things everyone was saying about, let's think of things that are really useful, like medical advancement, obviously customer experience and sports and things. I don't want to use the metaverse to watch Netflix, which is what Zuckerberg's, no, seriously, it's like Netflix, it's your Nintendo games, just, that's not where we want to go with it. Now, I think it's a good thing that his little empire is crumbling around him and we can look at the real use of this, which, can have real benefits, like meeting people globally that you can't do physically. Augmented reality, it means something. It's not just, a different channel, different way. I mean, remember we used to put 3D glasses on to watch movies, 40 years ago now? I mean, was it that dissimilar? What are these coming at me?
Still doing that. Avatar, $2.6 billion. That's a 3D movie that just came out.
Yeah.
People are still wearing 3D glasses.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mary, really cheekily. I want to go back to college to take your classes. Can I take your Metaverse class in the Metaverse?
No, because
Okay.
you have to be a university of because our business model is we get tuition dollars and you're part of an academic program.
Yeah, that might be a good conversation for drinks, though. But,
Yes.
but thank you
Okay.
so much for being a fantastic panel. It's a hard topic to discuss. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.